How's it going, everyone? It's been a minute since I've done a video, and I wanted to make a video finally about something that's special to me. So today, I'm going to be talking about Road Trip Adventure. Now, some of you may know this game, some of you may not know this game. This is going to sort of be a mixture of a review and a look back on what the game meant to its fans and its players. So, in order to kind of understand what this game is, we have to go back to the era in which it was made and understand why it was made. So, we have to go back to the early 2000s. Now, Road Trip is actually part of a larger collection of games, specifically the Chorokyu series. Chorokyu series has over 24 games in it, and Road Trip is Chorokyu HG2, HG being high grade, and HG 1 through 4 came out on the PS2 in the 2000s and were essentially the last of the Chorokyu games. There was one more title for the PS2 in Japan and a Wii game, and then the series pretty much died off. The entire Chorokyu series was meant to be a marketing add-on for the Chorokyu toy cars that were sold in Japan, which were little pullback cars you could put a coin in the back of and they would do a wheelie. Now, I could talk about the origin, the basis of these games all day, but that's not really the topic of today's video. What needs to be understood here is that at the time these games came out, there were a lot of juggernauts in the racing game genre. Games like Burnout, Flat Out, Midnight Club, Need for Speed, all of these games were releasing giant titles at the time that still today are often considered the best in the series. And so the Chorokyu series kind of fell behind these titles and was kind of forgotten. Road Trip is probably the most well-known and the one people have the most nostalgia for, and that's what we're going to get into. Now, for those of you who haven't played, I'm going to spoil as little as possible, but I am going to give a rundown of the general kind of story and structure of the game that's given to you pretty much straight off if you decide to play this. Once you start this up on an emulator on a PS2, the moment you start to play it, you're going to get told what I'm about to tell you. So, the premise of Road Trip, at least the story of it, is very simple. President Forrest, president of the Road Trip world or universe, as you might want to call it, is sick of being president. And instead of having an election or something of that nature, he's simply going to race someone, and whoever defeats him becomes the next president. Now, in order to race him, you'll need to get all of your licenses by beating all the different races in the game, and then beating the World Grand Prix. And once you beat the World Grand Prix, you can race President Forrest for the presidency. Now, this sounds pretty simple. It's a structure that other racing games use, but what sets Road Trip apart is what happens outside of this. See, Road Trip is an open-world racing game, which is nothing out of the ordinary. But what makes it special is that it's also an RPG. Instead of having a normal open world with simple traffic and buildings and roads to drive around on, Road Trip has its traffic as other cars that you can talk to and buildings that you can enter that other cars live in. As you travel from town to town, finishing more and more races to complete your licenses, you'll meet more and more of these NPCs who offer you quests, offer you the opportunity to take part in mini games, offer you jobs, and can eventually become your teammates. Every town that you travel to sort of has its own theme for a lot of these NPCs. For example, the Las Vegas-like Sandpolis has a lot of cars that are sort of movie star cars, or foreign cars, at least to Japan, whereas Fuji City features a lot of Japanese cars. Cloud Hill features a lot of fantasy cars, and so on. You'll meet more and more of these NPCs as you travel, and they'll offer you a ton of things to do. I mentioned that you'll travel town to town doing different races, and that's because every town has something called a Q's Factory. Q's Factories are kind of like your hubs in-game. This is where you save and load, switch your parts and your teammates' parts, and where you enter races and the World Grand Prix. As you get to different towns and unlock different Q's Factories, those towns will become available for fast travel. Now, as you unlock each license, each Q's Factory will unlock more and more races and more tracks. Some of them are completely new tracks, and some of them are variants of existing tracks with different conditions or harder opponents. Now, in Road Trip, racing may not be the whole core of the game, but it is a very important component of it. Each Q's Factory has different themed tracks around whatever location the Q's Factory is located in. For example, in Papaya Island, the tracks are tropical themed. For each race, you'll need to equip your car and your teammates' cars with parts that'll help you complete that race better. So, for example, if you're at a water track where you'll be going underwater, you'll need propellers, or if you want to, skis to go over the top of the water. Tracks with snow require studded snow tires to really grip. Tracks with tarmac require racing tires for the best handling and performance. Every time you enter a race, you'll have to think about these things and equip your car and your teammates' cars to suit the needs of each individual track. As you progress farther in the game and unlock higher licenses, new versions of these tracks or completely new tracks will unlock, where the opponents will be faster, tougher, and sometimes have better gadgets and parts added to them that make them tougher, and you'll need to equip yourself and your opponents accordingly. However, the parts you equip in races will be just as useful in the open world. Propellers equipped for underwater races will help you search for underwater collectibles, and studded snow tires will help you climb mountains to collect coins or get to NPCs up on higher slopes. All of these same logic in a race applies to the open world. Now, I'm sitting here talking about parts and modifications, but how does that work? Well, most towns in Road Trip have part stores, paint shops, and body shops. Part stores allow you to buy parts, performance parts, tires, engines, etc. Paint shops allow you to paint your car, and body shops allow you to buy new bodies for your car, which don't offer any performance benefit but are solely cosmetic. Once you've bought all these things, you take them back to the Q's factory and apply them to you and your teammates. How you equip your teammates versus you is solely up to you. You could enter a snow track and only give yourself the studded tires needed and leave your teammates to fend for themselves on regular tires. It's completely up to you and your budget and how you want to handle your team and how they race. Now, when racing and in the open world, Road Trip's physics have always been rather questionable. While they're fun, cars often kind of bounce off into the air at random times and can float downward awkwardly. It's pretty much people's largest complaint with the game, and while it can be fun, it does get annoying after a while. Aside from racing and free roam, you have tons of things to do. Mini games like soccer, or tunnel cars, or highway racing, or rallies, or you have all sorts of quests in game, of which I won't spoil. There's also no limit on when you can do these things. You can get through the intro cutscene, never do a race, and go out into the open world and do all of the quests. Alternatively, you can choose not to really do any at all, or any way you want to. It's kind of similar to Fallout in that respect. As I said before, I won't really spoil too many of the game's, quests and how they run and everything, but to kind of cap this all off, one of the biggest features in this game, besides the racing and the quests and the open world, is the fact that there's a city builder in this game. Now, it's not exactly like a SimCity or a Metropolis Mania, but you are granted a huge parcel of land called My City, and you end up recruiting different NPCs from around the map to come live there, and you form what is the biggest and most useful in terms of parts and body shops and such city in the game. It's also the home of your own garage, which is a place where all of your collected knickknacks from quests and whatnot are stored, as well as your racing trophies, and you can even change the theme of what your garage looks like, as well as My City having its own Q's factory. Rounding out the rest of the game, the open world has a full day and night cycle, which actually affects some NPCs and some quests and even some races. And there's also radio stations. There's an ambient music station, of which there's an entire story behind how the music in it was stolen, and there's also kind of a rock station that has some Japanese rock music from the time. In the Japanese version of the game, there is also a talk radio station, although that's not featured in the English versions. But what makes Road Trip so special is not the inclusion of all of these different features. It's how seamlessly the game manages to blend them all together in a smooth and flowing gameplay loop. Never at all during the story or during any of your gameplay do you ever feel forced to grind, or do you ever feel forced to do a certain task. Never either do you feel that everything's too easy, or too hard. Everything runs a very fine line down the middle of playability and challenge. And that's something that even games of the time really struggled to manage, in my experience. Games today are terrible at it, but even back in the day, that was really hard for them to do. The other thing is that Road Trip makes sure that everything you do matters. It makes sure that even the smallest of objectives and the smallest of quests are tracked in your stamp book, which is the final 100% completion of the game, is to fill the entire stamp book. Even the smallest things you do, talking to certain NPCs, visiting certain areas, will give you a stamp, and all of those, even those small things you do, lead towards completion and unlock something meaningful. Nothing you do is ever really meaningless. And it does all of this in a world with almost no loading screens. The only time you'll experience a loading screen is entering a building or entering a race. There's no barriers to anywhere you can go, and you travel seamlessly between realistic towns and fantastical places like towns with mushrooms for houses, or the peaks of mountains or tropical islands. It doesn't matter, the game simply lets you go wherever you can see. But I think the biggest thing, and the thing that most people remember, most people who are nostalgic for this game, and rightfully so, because there is no rose-tinted glasses with this game. It is still as good today as it was back then. What people remember most is that Road Trip makes you feel at home. Road Trip is cozy, because despite the racing, and despite the city building, and all of the other features, what Road Trip does best is it always makes you feel like you're welcome in the world of Road Trip. Another YouTuber, one who inspired me to actually make this video, a YouTuber by the name of The Utter Crisp, who did his own review on this game, and I recommend you go and watch it. He said something that I agree with, and so I'm just going to quote him. Road Trip is like a cup of hot cocoa on a cold day. It always makes you feel at home. In a world of modern games that are always trying to be the next big thing and be some sort of, gigantic viral sensation or be the next, big, huge hit, it's nice to go back to a game that doesn't have any of that. Road Trip is simply Road Trip, and it always will be. And up until recently, it seemed like Road Trip would always be Road Trip on its own. See, Road Trip sequels, HG3 and HG4, were simply not as good as Road Trip was. HG3 was kind of like a sample platter of Road Trip, which kind of had some of the same features, but kind of stripped them down, and HG4 leaned in for a harder RPG-focused approach, which isn't a bad thing, but it lacks the charm that Road Trip has. However, I'm sure many people watching this are very excited of the recent announcement of the upcoming Road Trip fan game, Rhode Island Adventure. I have personally invested some money into this project, and I am super excited to see what is produced when this fan game comes out. Now, in all my previous videos that I've made, I've almost exclusively talked about the Crew Motorfest, and that was largely because I was simply wanting to grow the channel. I know I don't have many viewers, but those who do know that I make crew videos normally. I really do not have a passion for the crew, and so to finally make this video about a game that I love and have loved for over 2 decades, it feels really good, and I really hope this video takes off. I don't think it will, but if it does, I really hope that everyone who watched this enjoyed it, and if you haven't played this game, go out and try it. It's available for emulators, and you can get it relatively cheaply on the PS2. I don't have time to produce videos often, but for those of you who made it to this point, my next game review, looking back at a game like this, will be about a racing game that's far less cozy and far more lonely.